So I've been running campaigns on Google Ads since 2011. That's over 13 years of experience managing many millions of dollars of ad spend on behalf of advertisers, both big and small as well. In that time, I have seen it all. I've seen everything you can imagine in the world of Google Ads. I'm going to tell you my 5 biggest lessons from running Google Ads campaigns for over 13 years, so you don't make the same mistakes I did when learning how to use this incredibly complex platform. Let's get into it. The first lesson I really want to hammer home to you guys about Google Ads is that you shouldn't be making changes too frequently. Back in the day, you kind of had to make changes frequently because that's just how Google Ads used to work. There was no smart bidding, there was no automated bidding strategies. Everything was manual CPC and manual intervention, meaning you had to make manual bid adjustments, changing your max CPC bids, changing device adjustments, changing all sorts of seasonal adjustments, time adjustments in the campaigns. And that meant making changes on a very frequent basis. If one week you looked into the platform and you saw your CPCs weren't giving you any traffic, you'd have to increase your CPCs. Then the following week, if your CPCs didn't yield any results, you'd have to bring them back down again to control the costs in your campaign. So you were making changes all the time. But when Google started getting smart bidding to work properly, and believe me, there was a time where Google pushed smart bidding when it simply did not work and it was better to use manual CPC. Eventually, like anything Google does, they eventually got it right. And now with automated smart bidding strategies, you need to take your hands off your campaign and give things more time. If you make changes too quickly in a smart bidding campaign, it breaks the pattern of data Google is using to inform its future bidding. It becomes an unsettled campaign and Google can't bid effectively in line with your campaign goals. So as a result of smart bidding, you have to make changes less frequently. Never make campaign changes based on a single day of data. And even if it's a week long of data you're looking at, sometimes you just have a bad week and you have to let your campaign settle and eventually things will return to normal. You are allowed to have a bad week of data, let things settle, and then make changes over longer periods of data analysis. Maybe look at the month, maybe look at a few weeks. Don't look at 1 week or 1 day. Take your time when making changes, because if you make a change too early, the algorithm will get thrown off and you'll end up negatively impacting your campaigns. That was a huge learning curve for me, and a lesson I hope you don't make the same mistakes I did when you're running your campaigns. Next big lesson: know the numbers behind the business you're working within. Whether you're an agency or a freelancer, or maybe you're working in-house as a PPC specialist, in any case, you need to understand the numbers behind your business. And also, if you are a business owner, of course you need to know the numbers behind your business, but I can hear you already potentially saying, hey, I know the numbers behind my business, I'm the business owner, of course I do. Well, not necessarily. You see, every client I work with for my PPC audits, I send them a questionnaire, asking some very specific and detailed questions so I can understand their business a lot better. For example, what is your average order value? How much profit margin do you make per sale? What is your conversion rate of leads to sale? How many leads do you need to make a sale? All of these metrics in the business are incredibly important and inform the performance potential of your Google Ads campaign. How many business owners know all of this stuff off the top of their head? Well, I can tell you specifically that over 50% of people who have completed that survey turn around and tell me, hey, I hadn't thought about this. Thanks for telling me that. Thanks for giving me this survey. I hadn't thought about my business like this. I hadn't thought about my Google Ads campaigns in line with my business operational performance, which to me is crazy. But I get it, you're in there in your business, working on the business day to day. Maybe you're a freelancer or an agency and you're focused on the Google Ads side of things. But the biggest lesson I have in my years of managing Google Ads is that you have to look at the business first, then Google Ads, and tie your Google Ads strategy to the business performance. Because I can jump into your account, look at your data, make changes, and give you the best cost per lead your business has ever seen within Google Ads. But if I don't know the numbers behind the business, that potential success in my mind could actually be a failure in reality because the campaign is unprofitable. And believe me, it can happen. Sometimes I find metrics and systems and issues in businesses that need fixing first. I have seen it all. I've seen salespeople not call leads back in time or even give leads a phone call in the first place. I've seen issues with delivering services on time and in budget. I've seen issues with negative customer reviews on businesses. I have seen everything that can negatively impact a Google Ads campaign performance. And these types of issues will need fixing before you can guarantee success running ads on Google. Remember, Google Ads cannot save a bad business. If your business is bad, no amount of marketing or advertising is going to help you, because those numbers behind the business are going to inform your strategy. For example, if your average order value is $100, but your average CPC is $10, after profit margin, cost of advertising, taking the conversion rate into account, there is not a Google Ads strategist alive that can make that work. So there are fundamental issues within the business model that need to be addressed before Google Ads can solve those problems. You have to know the business first, otherwise you're going to be completely lost. Learn about the business first. That's a huge lesson. Lesson number 3, keep it simple. Please. Because of automation in Google Ads and the growth of automation of Google's systems like smart bidding and target CPA and target ROAS bidding strategies, both becoming very, very effective, you don't need complex setup structures anymore. SKAG setups, which is single keyword ad groups, where you have an ad group for every keyword in your campaign. The theory goes that having an ad for every keyword means you can tailor the ad copy to that exact keyword, increasing your quality score, increasing your relevance. Those strategies are dead. They're completely dead in the water because of how Google Ads works in the modern era versus how it used to work 10 years ago. And even strategies where people obsess over quality score, moving from something like an 8 to a 10 and really trying to optimize that movement, those strategies are dead as well. They're dead in the water. Ad rank doesn't work like that anymore. There are too many variables and factors to think about, and all of those factors and variables to think about that would even move the needle on quality score. If you optimize those factors, your quality score would increase anyway. So obsessing over ancient metrics like worrying about moving your quality score 1 point, those strategies are gone as well. You don't need to be going crazy running tons and tons of scripts that do automated activities every single day. There are scripts out there that force exact match to be exact. Those things, again, I used to be an advocate of some of these scripts, but in reality, those days are gone. Smart bidding has got much better since these kinds of scripts came out, and those close variants you get on exact match can help you get conversions. And when they're not helping you, yes, you can make them negative keywords and you can go through that process, but ultimately for the majority of businesses, in most scenarios, those close variants convert. One of the biggest signs that told me that simplification is the future of Google Ads is the fact that Marin Software, which is the biggest bid management and Google Ads management software platform out there, they're going out of business. They're running out of customers. They've had to lay off 29% of their staff. They're going under. And that's because people don't need them anymore. We don't need to go complex on strategy anymore, because we have to keep things simple, because Google's bidding algorithms have got that much better, to the point that the biggest PPC software bid management company out there is going out of business. In fact, I made a video on this exact subject. If you want to watch my breakdown as to the best way to lay out a Google Ads account structure in the modern era, click the video popping up on screen right now to watch that tutorial. Google Ads in the modern era is about using a simplified structure that allows Google's bidding algorithm to do its thing. Don't get in the way of it. Don't trip it up. Don't put hurdles in its path, because if you give it the right data with good conversion data, which we'll go on to in a second, by the way, then that will allow the algorithm to bid effectively, and don't put hurdles in its place with complex structures either. Keep things simple and you'll get better results. Lesson number 4, you are not going to get perfect data. Back in the day, you could basically get all of the data. You could get every single click, you could get every single conversion. There were very few scenarios where you couldn't get the data of a converted user. Flash forward to the modern era, and now we have legislation in Europe and the UK, like GDPR, where you give the customer a choice as to whether or not they should be tracked. Then back in the day, Apple used to be a bit more laxed on security compared to where they are now. iOS now has security and privacy as one of the main features of their software, meaning advertising platforms are getting frozen out of accessing conversion data as well. The conversion journey also used to be way more simplified as well. People would literally just use one device until about 2015, where mobile search overtook desktop search overall on Google. There was a point where people basically just used laptops and desktops, and mobile device searches weren't even a thing. So cross-device attribution wasn't really important, and trying to unpick how people browse between devices wasn't a challenge back in the day, whereas now it is massively a challenge. Somebody could be on the train home from commuting from work, then get in, use their laptop or use their tablet. They can even watch their smart TV. There are so many touch points in a user journey now compared to previously. Things have got a lot more complex. They've got so complex, in fact, that because of the gaps in conversion data, all ad platforms are turning to data modeling, where they estimate conversions based on historical pathways people have taken to conversion, and they estimate what the impact of your advertising is on getting conversions. So modeling of conversions is now normal. Who would have thought, looking 10 years ago, that we'd have platforms guessing, basically using very sophisticated guessing on the number of conversions a campaign has generated? But we are where we are. There are things you can put in place to improve the quality of your conversion data. You should be using enhanced conversions as a starting point. Of course, if you're using consent mode as well, Google can get more data from conversions. Even when people opt out, they can aggregate that data and try and estimate conversions and model conversions off the back of that using consent mode. But there's also things like server-side tagging, where you can actually allow yourself to tag on your side of your website as opposed to on the customer side, meaning you get more conversion data that way as well. You'll probably need a developer for the server side, but ultimately there are things and workarounds you can do to help improve the quality of your conversion data. But remember, you will not get everything. You're going to have massive gaps in your conversion data compared to yesteryear, where you basically got everything. That is the reality of Google Ads and all digital advertising in the modern era. So as a result, with some fast-growing businesses, I use something called MER, or Marketing Efficiency Ratio. This is basically an equation where you divide the total revenue by the total marketing spend, and that gives you a ratio that you can judge success on. Because what will happen is, if you spend more on marketing, you expect that ratio of revenue to increase. And sometimes when these platforms are modeling conversions, or on the other hand, claiming all conversions, then it's hard to know where to place your money. So you kind of have to take a bet. When you're making that bet of increasing budgets and spend across multiple ad platforms, including Google Ads, managing marketing efficiency ratio will give you a total uplift as to whether you put more money in, did you get more sales on the back end? And that can give you some, I suppose, kind of confidence in where you're putting your money. You may see Google Ads tells you that your ROAS hasn't improved after putting more money in. In fact, it might have dropped in platform. But on the other side of the coin, across the business, because of those gaps in conversion I'm talking about, you may have increased your business size. So looking at MER, or Marketing Efficiency Ratio, can help you gain a bit more confidence in your investment in advertising. And again, as I say, this is the reality of where advertising is in the modern era. Don't fight it, roll with it. And the final lesson I can give you from over a decade of Google Ads advertising is don't fear change. Google Ads is always changing, and when I think back to 2011 when I first started using the platform, and then jumping forward till now, it's a completely different product. It basically is a different system. It's completely turned around, it's completely changed. As I've mentioned, things were all about manual control and having control of all of your advertising. Keywords were a massive focus. You know, the match types of exact and phrase were actually exact and actually phrase, and things were very, very different, and things have changed a lot in that time. So my job has gone from manually intervening across multiple data touch points in an account to steering smart bidding. That is essentially what we're doing now. We're going from controlling everything to steering an AI algorithm. And it does need adjusting, it does need steering, it does need pointing in the right direction with good data, with good setups, but that is essentially what the job has changed to. And the reason I say don't fear it is because this is only the beginning. How long before keywords disappear from Google Ads, where Google doesn't allow you to choose your keywords anymore? It scans your website and decides it knows the context of what you're looking for. Maybe you give it a few prompts, but ultimately keywords could disappear. I think, for example, phrase match could go very, very soon. We've already seen that potentially phrase match could be gone because of the way broad match behaves and the way phrase match behaves are very similar, but phrase match has a big disadvantage in smart bidding. So there are things like that to be aware of. Google Ads is going to change in that automated direction. But one thing to remember is, of course, that you still hold the key to performance, because there are things Google could never do. Google does not understand the business you're working within, which is why I mentioned that point of understanding the business being so important. That context of the business is incredibly powerful. That strategy aspect of a Google Ads specialist or a business owner managing a Google Ads campaign, that is massive, and Google can't take that or know that. All it can do is work with data that you give it, but you ultimately hold the key to success in Google Ads, and it's important you remember that. Go back to the basics of what good marketing actually is, and Google Ads just becomes a tool that you use and leverage as opposed to this big, scary, automated monster. So as you can see, Google Ads is always changing, and just recently they've announced a bunch of new AI-based updates. So if you want to learn more about these updates and learn what's happening in the world of Google Ads, watch the video popping up on screen right now where I break it down for you.